All right. Coming to you live from Qatar. This is going to be the first episode of Futures with Hani. This is a podcast that I decided to create so that I could be able to discuss with my friends, some entrepreneurs, some people who I find have interesting points and ideas about discussions of the futures, ideas of the futures, where is the future going, how we anticipate the next 10, 15, 20 years, or even the short term, 5, 3, 4, 5 years to look like. Different discussions. We'll be having a variety of discussions, and I come off and tell you guys initially and firstly that I am not an expert of most of the things that we're going to be discussing. So I'm not a source of information. I'm just a somewhat individual who's curious, who likes to have discussions with people who may be a little bit smarter than me, who know more about things that I'm interested in. So what motivated me to create this was essentially my lack of first knowledge, and I tried to find a way for me to get interested in what I feel like is going to be a very important next few years for all of us. I mean, I'm 28 years old. I'm kind of curious as to what my next 10 years are going to be looking like, whether it be being from kind of a work point of view, a health point of view, a machinery, intelligence, all these kind of technology, etc. topics that we're going to be having here. And I'm going to also be mentioning that what my personal thoughts look like as well. So again, I'm not an expert, guys, so please don't hold me accountable to anything I try to discuss that I feel like I feel just talking about, just seeing what's out there, as well as I'm interested in being able to hopefully get people who are experts in these spaces onto this kind of discussion panel or topic or podcast, etc. So let's come off first by discussing what's happening today. Right now I'm in Doha. I'm here for work for the next month and a half or so, and kind of wanted to first come off of like, here right now I'm stuck in quarantine for the next 2 weeks, obviously with COVID-19 being extremely important in today's world, and kind of fixated upon understanding why COVID-19 and how it happened, and who's the stakeholders that actually get affected by something like this. And I'll start off by saying, who are the first stakeholders involved in this finding out COVID-19? Well, I heard came from China. I mean, there's multiple sources who say other things, and who may say that these things came off from certain test labs or whatever the case may be, but for current knowledge, we know that this came from China, and it's spread across the world. And right now we have most of the world affected by it, some places more than others. And kind of discussing the kind of rates or data that we have to work with. I mean, from my understanding, being in Doha, obviously when I came into the country, obviously I had to have a PCR test done, and I had to have a bunch of different documents that I need as well. And they have an application, I think called ihtiraz or something like that. I could be wrong, but essentially I had to download it and kind of keep the government informed about what's happening with me while I'm stuck in quarantine. So right now I'm staying in the Western Hotel for the next 2 weeks, hopefully less if I come out negative and I can be able to shift. But my 14 days are fixed. I have to be isolating myself from the rest of the world, or the rest of Doha. But the funny thing is, when I came into the country, this application actually shows you the numbers of people who have been affected by the coronavirus. And I just want to bring it up here because it's on my phone, and it's a pretty cool application. It is called ihtiraz, and I'm already logged in. So it actually shows you the information, and in Qatar they've actually done almost 1 million tests, 970,000 tests, and 132,000 of them have been positive. 2,700 currently under treatment, and 211 last 24 hours, which is a very, very positive stat that very happy to say that in the current space that I'm in, in Doha. There, I've actually done a really good job in actually maintaining this the COVID-19 outbreak. These kind of forced, or let's say forced, because I'll discuss some other locations where I went to, kind of this forced isolation spaces where you have to book a hotel room which is currently under mandate by them, and they can control where everybody's going, where everybody is, making sure everybody's being responsible and being isolated. But the funny thing is, which I found very interesting, is that from the 132,000 that have been positive, thankfully there's only been 231 deaths here in Doha. Now, if that comes off to about 0.02%, or sorry, 0.2%, sorry, I got that wrong. So 0.2%. And I find that interesting because I don't know what the stats are when it comes to, cancer rates of death, and when it comes to like regular influenza or regular, stuff that happens to us on a day-to-day basis, most of the world, what the rate of death are for those. However, I'm kind of shocked to see it just so low. I mean, I think Doha has done a better job than other places, Qatar, and I think I live predominantly in the UAE, and UAE also did a fantastic job. I think they've conducted over 10 million tests. I mean, that's crazy to me, the space they were able to, like a population of about 10 million people, where you have done about 10 million tests. And obviously I've done maybe 4 or 5, so not everybody has been tested, but we know that from the current data that the younger generation doesn't get hit hard. And my point is that, there's some places that, for example, in the United States, where you have like 9 million people who've tested positive and 231,000 tests, which is like about 2%. And that's kind of shocking. I mean, I'm not sure how many people die per year from flu, and I would like to bring that up just to be sure that I'm not kind of saying anything crazy. But let's see. All right, sorry. Sorry, yeah, I'm pulling this up. Yeah, so I mean, I'm curious to see what are the kind of factors we're dealing with. How do we compare this to the rest of the world? How do we compare this? So it says the CDC reports that there's about 24,000 to 62,000 death in the US just from flu. All right. So obviously this is kind of higher COVID-19 has done worse for the US in terms of how many people die. It's about 4 times more. So I would imagine the flu rate. So it is something that we should be worried about, something that we should be concerned with. Obviously we have to listen to the authorities, focus on what they're advising us to do, and stay away from people who we think that they may be sick. We should advise them, stay isolated, stay away from older people, because maybe they have it hit harder than we do. When it does compare to the flu directly, obviously in the US, it is a lot more predominant. Whatever. When we compare it to Qatar, I'm not sure how many people die over here, but it just kind of was lower than I expected it to be, based on how much COVID-19 directly affects the economy at the moment. So just purely firsthand, obviously everything stopped in the UAE for a short period of time. I think between February and March we went on a complete lockdown up until maybe mid-July or August, I want to say. And we had limited office space, limited office capacity. Most people were working from home, and which is a good thing when we have an outbreak, but it's also something that slows down business, at least for us. Where I'm working in the construction space, where we're actually working access control space, which is predominantly linked to, kind of consultants or construction consultants, design consultants, etc. And everything stopped for us because nobody was going to be able to go to site. I wasn't being able to visit, kind of my clients, etc. So that was something that was concerning for me, and it actually did have a direct effect on our sales. And thankfully we were lucky enough where We didn't really take it. We really didn't ask anybody to take a pay cut. We aren't necessarily a very big operation. So for the people who have really big operations, where you have tens and thousands of employees, or even just thousands of employees, or hundreds of employees, it might be really much more difficult to be able to continue to maintain. I have a lot of friends who work in the hotel and hospitality space, where I know for sure they were hit very hard. And just getting people excited to come back after everything opened up again in the UAE. I know that there was this kind of struggle initially to be able to work with, the limited capacity that we're allowed to have based on what the governments are setting. Instead of being able to hold 200 people, now we can hold 50. I'm just using these numbers. I'm not sure about them. But I know it's about that capacity where it was limited. I know the hotels, in the UAE, we have many, many hotels. And so the options are extremely open for everybody. But I know some hotels that were going for maybe 1,000 dirhams a night, which is about like $300, $250. And now they're probably going for like maybe 200 or 300 dirhams, which is like $80. So you saw them take a 25% pay cut, and I think they're just operating at cost just so they can attract people to their places. But what happened was, initially in the lockdown, we had nobody coming in and out of the UAE. So people in the hospitality space were getting hit because there were no new people coming to the country. So that's concerning for me. We need to know how we can actually manage this, because I worry that if this happens again, if we're back into another lockdown 2.0, who survives and who doesn't? It becomes really difficult to understand, like, hey, can we survive cash-wise? Can I continue paying my salaries? Can I continue paying my mortgage on this property that I have, or if not a mortgage, can I continue paying rent? Could I continue, etc., whatever it may be. We know a lot of people who lost their jobs, who had to leave the country, go back to their home countries, or if they're locals, try to find other jobs. Thankfully, the UAE supports, the local government support, the locals, as well as the people who are working, the local companies and we are a local company. So they've done a really good job on that. So it's just something to talk about. I'll probably bring this up more in the future, trying to get different people on who can help me out with the different stats and different things that might be different data from their own job space. So that being said, I want to discuss a few more things, because I want to discuss different things that we'll be going through. So I want to talk about so many varieties of conversations. So I'm going to shift it now to what I have next, which is elections. COVID-19 has been something to do directly correlated with the elections. I feel like it's been a tool for everybody, for both Biden and Trump. And you don't know which side you're on. If you don't know which side you're on, I don't know. I have no education about the election, so I don't really want to talk about them. But I know that they affect the entire world, and I know that both the people who are running for presidency, Trump running again and Biden running for the first time, have their own kind of ideas of what they imagine the world to look like for COVID-19. We know Trump is advocate for, hey, get out, let's work. COVID-19 can be cured. Just something we need to continue to work with. And I kind of I agree and disagree with that point of view. But I'm more in the sense curious as to what is the perfect equilibrium of where is the ideal point of view. I don't believe in complete lockdown. I think that's terrible for the economy. I think it's terrible for the individuals in the economy. I think it just supports the people who have the most money to continue to survive. If you're living on a fixed income or on different projects, if you're working in, for example, events, you have a big problem now. And so we need to find a perfect equilibrium. How do we set people up for success instead of failure? I think just complete lockdowns are terrible for the economy. But then again, I don't know how after living this 6 or 8 months, I think that we need to say, hey, listen, guys, we can't afford to be in complete lockdown, and we need to find a real solution as to, okay, how do we make sure that people aren't dying from this kind of disease? Where is the vaccine? How quickly can we have it? What are we supposed to do until then? And who's the most liable? How can we protect these liabilities and make sure that they don't get affected by this? So coming back to the elections, I mean, I don't know whose side you're on, but this is kind of important for the future, because I know Biden has this no carbon consumption, at least in the California. I feel like they have, and by 2035 they don't want any cars to be, or I think it might be for the whole US, I could be wrong, but to be all electric cars. And while I am a fan of electric cars, I'm also a fan of understanding that carbon is extremely important. How do I say, commodity for the U.S. economy, and for all economies. And I know that, you know, Saudi Arabia, I know that Texas, all these countries, you know, they're huge exporters of oil, and you know, this no carbon thing, I think, is not a feasible solution. I think there needs to be a perfect solution where all countries come into agreement. It can't just be the United States. I watched a very interesting podcast recently on the Joe Rogan Experience, where there is this I think is running for Senate. I'm gonna pull it up right now because I feel like everybody should watch that episode, because it gives a great idea of what are we supposed to do. Yeah, so I think his name is Wesley Hunt, and he's a candidate for the Texas 7th Congressional District, and he's a Republican. And not necessarily saying I support Republican thought process necessarily, but I'm not saying I support the Democratic one either. I wouldn't consider myself a liberal, but I wouldn't consider myself any things. I don't know where I hold. I stand where it's like perfect solutions from everywhere. And he talks about kind of, okay, so the United States has, Biden specifically has this idea where, okay, no carbon footprint by 2035. Well, if we continue at this rate for the US, I say if we, and I say we as a US, if they continue, his point of view is that if it's a huge part of your economy, in terms of providing, you know, kind of your for revenue for your economy, and kind of if you're a big exporter of this, and all of a sudden everybody else is in this topic, so China's continue producing facilities to actually continue producing carbon footprint, or they're not watching out, or neither is India, or neither is Russia, or neither is whoever it may be. If there's no kind of agreement from all governments where we all understand, hey, listen, you can't be doing this or you can't be doing that, rather than have it from a micro level, let's look at it from a macro level. If I do it at a micro level, nobody else does it, how effective is this? And then how ineffective is this for my economy? So I was kind of worried. Like, I don't know, because I know the U.S. is the biggest economy in the world today, and it's directly, you know, supports the United Arab Emirates, supports Saudi, it supports all the countries that I have, you know, Canada, it supports, and I'm Canadian, so it's very important for me that this is addressed from I am very much understanding that, you know, that there's a global warming and its effects, and we need to do something about it for sure. However, who needs to do something about it? And is this something that's supposed to be done with everybody involved, or is this supposed to be done where each individual economy is responsible for its own self? Because in that case, everybody's going to be doing what maximizes their own best interest. But we need to have certain topics where, no, everybody involved needs to sit down at the table and see where we can cut out, we can kind of understand what the risk for the worlds are, and how can we, you know, address those. That being said, recently there's been a new peace plan with the Middle East, United Arab Emirates and Bahrain signing peace plans with Israel, which is exciting for the economies. I mean, I don't know how that's going to directly affect, but I know that hopefully that kind of brings more stability to the current situation, you know, with Palestine, etc. I am for these kind of countries and these kind of peace plans. I think this is the way forward. We need to sit down at the table, see how we can all compromise and find an equal solution that suits everybody. And I'm excited to see how this works. And so, that's kind of just quickly skimming through what happened in the Middle East. And then I heard that there will be more peace plans soon to come. So let's see. I mean, it's exciting to see. One more thing that I found interesting now is I was watching my sister was visiting me from Saudi in the UAE just recently, and her children were all working from home, so they're doing their schooling in Saudi from the UAE because she just wanted to, you know, kind of take a break from her, just take a vacation. Actually, just come to UAE. She also has her very, very exciting project called Aya Animations, and essentially Aya Animations talks about or is an animating tool used to help drive values. It's a value-based entertainment used to help for children directly. I think it ranges between the ages of like 3 and 8, and very, very fun to watch. Very interesting the way they come off and try to teach children. Very fun, funny, different. It's super cool. Something everybody needs to check it out. I mean, and support it, because I think it's interesting to see with this COVID-19 how people are going to be looking at education, and how we need to look at education as a whole in our current education system. I think that this textbook way of just learning A to Z and then spitting it out and then never using it again, I don't remember anything I had done other than certain things I did in math and business and in university, in high school, let's say. University was more, important for my life. I mean, I kind of took the things I wanted to. I had the freedom. My father always told me, like, hey, if you're not enjoying it, you shouldn't be doing it, type of thing. But he also, I had to graduate as well. So that being said, I think it's very important. And I know I'll be having more discussions about these kind of things. So yeah, so either I know that I'm trailing away from topic to topic, but these are all kind of things that I'm interested in and things that I want to be discussing with different people moving forward. And I'm sure we'll be having Sarah on to be able to discuss her project soon hereafter. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was the stock markets, because I'm very much excited about that, how it's going to look like. I mean, I read a recent article today on Forbes, which said, one second, all right. Very interesting article I read today, where the title was "The Stock Market is on the edge of a historic crash." And I think they've been saying that for a few months now, but the market's just been keeping going up. I mean, I think the Dow Jones is up 10% for the last 6 months, and S&P is up 15% for the last 6 months, and then Tesla's up 270% for the last 6 months. So there's been stocks just keep going up, and the economy isn't reflecting that. I know there's so many people without jobs, and it just keeps going up. People who are living from support from the governments on a check that they get from the US specifically. And I know that the employment rate maybe is getting a little bit better now with us being able to ease things out, but I think there is a new infrastructure being built where people are the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and the poor are becoming more reliant on government support, which is, to me, something it's concerning. It's becoming more of a centralized economy. It's less decentralized, because obviously I'm a very big advocate of decentralization when it comes to business. I think governments need to let businesses operate, and when businesses operate perfectly, there's perfect competition, and when there's perfect competition, there's I think extreme effect when it comes to how's the economy doing. When we start letting governments having to handle people's checks instead of them having a job, and then people aren't doing or being efficient for the economy, or just becoming, whether it may be more how it affects people and their depression rates, and how it affects people with suicide rates, and how it affects people, mental health, etc. I mean, it's a very important discussion we need to be having. It just scares me to see how the stock market keeps going up and up and up. And I know that at least in the last 6 months, where COVID has been where it's been prominent. And why is it going up? I mean, people aren't going to work. People are obviously buying stuff on Amazon, so I can imagine Amazon going up. And people are going to rely on these e-commerce kind of tools to be able to help us out. But I mean, I'm very, very curious as to why this is happening. Things that, for example, artificial intelligence are becoming more and more powerful and becoming more and more useful. Like, we have Tesla cars who can drive themselves. I don't know. I fear these kind of things will make certain jobs that are important obsolete. And if they're obsolete, okay, these are uneducated people, or not as educated as these kind of super elite thinkers. Well, they might be out of work, and there might be no other work for them. And if there's no other work for them, what are we doing now? And if that is a central government who's going to continue supporting them, while I just fear that kind of environment and that kind of infrastructure, and I think that needs to be addressed very seriously. And I hopefully will have somebody who's more expert than me on to discuss this topic. Personally, I've recently started investing more and more into the stock market, and there's certain stocks that I like, and certain stocks, that I kind of avoid and stuff. But it's just like I want to be able to understand what's happening, and I feel like I fear that I just don't know enough about what's going on. So that's why I created this kind of Futures with Hani. I want to get people on to discuss all kinds of topics from all kinds of for whether it being intelligence, whether it being geofarming, whether it's health. And I think one more thing I want to talk about by today is health and awareness of health. I've recently, while I was in quarantine, put on about 10 to 15 kgs. And I was somebody who went from weighing about 135 all the way to 79. And I lost a big amount of weight with support, of medical doctors. I actually did a surgery to help me lose some weight. And in that, I don't know, I can imagine that people's health, it's hard to stay healthy in this. And I think it's extremely important to to make it aware to people that, hey, how important their health is, staying active, staying fit. I'm preaching to the choir, which is myself. I didn't do a good job at that, but I'm recently starting to, be more aware of it. And I think that health is something that I want to discuss more and more, whether it being mental health, physical health, how we eat, what we're putting in our body, where it's coming from, how important is that, and then kind of discuss things that we can do together to kind of support people and support the people who need the most help, and get different discussions out there. And that being said, I want to stop there and say, okay, thanks a lot for listening. I know this is going to be a very exciting period for me. I'm very, very curious as to where this goes, how far we can take this Futures with Hani. I know that I probably I have no expectations, but I do have some goals, and I know I do have some targets that I would like to hit. So and I do want to release content that's actually useful for everybody. And I don't want to release stuff that's just going to be stuff that, I don't find interesting. And if I don't find it interesting and I don't find it relevant for the future, I'm probably not going to be talking about it. So that being said, again, thanks a lot for listening, guys. Please subscribe to all the channels that I put this out on, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple iTunes, sorry. And thank you for listening, guys. Appreciate it. See you guys next time.